What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Payne. Welcome back to another Outerplane video. Alright guys, so this is going to be a fairly important one for those who are new to the game and those who have never played a Smilegate video game, mobile game, it doesn't matter, before. And I want to talk about stats, what they all mean, and how to use the stats properly on what characters and what you want to look for in gear stats. Okay, this is going to be a very important one because it's going to help you dictate how you gear your characters and what your characters are going to look for in stats to make them more efficient and proficient in what they do. Okay, so let's go into what actual stats are. So if you click on the hero here, guys, it doesn't matter who we choose, right? Because here, my Valentine has all this set up here. Now, I want to show you guys here, the attacks here, the defense, these are all considered base stats, okay? These are all base stats right here. Everything with the pluses is what you get from gear or other things, mostly from gear though, and talismans, etc., right? Skills will not amplify these pluses. Only gear and the special gear will, okay? Just so you guys are aware of that. Now, what does each single stat mean? And what does it mean for the character? So I'm going to show you guys examples of some characters that use specific stats over others, and then how you want to gear those characters up so they become more efficient in what they do. So for example, Valentine is a ranger. Okay, so you can see up here, Ranger generates 20 action points at the start of the turn. That's their trait, right? You can kind of see their tactician. This is their base stats here, where they're the best. She's the fastest in speed, has really good health, etc., right? And you can kind of click here as well too to kind of see what element they are. So here are the stats. What does attack do? Attack's pretty straightforward. The higher you attack, the more damage you deal to your enemies. Very straightforward on that one. Defense. The higher your defense, the less damage you take from your enemies. Again, very straightforward ones, right? Health. Obviously, you can no longer participate in combat once your health falls below 0. So the more health you have, the longer you survive. With added defense, etc. Now, speed. The higher your speed, the more often you can act. Now, you know in the speed, there's like a move bar that on the bottom of the screen when you're doing a battle. The more speed you have, the faster you can go. And yes, you can in fact overlap people. So the speed is going to be king pretty much in all content. And I've been saying this from day one of all my guides that I've been making. Okay, crit chance. Chance for a critical hit to occur. When a critical hit occurs, the damage dealt is increased accordingly to the crit damage. So you can see here, your crit damage is exactly going off your crit chance. Now, the reason why her crit chance is fairly low, she has a skill that increases everybody's crit chance and crit damage, right? So crit damage 153.6 plus 3.6. The more of this you have, the more when you crit, the more damage you will do with your crit damage, right? So this is going to be one of the best multipliers for your character's damage output, like it is in every RPG game practically. So crit damage is directly proportional, or not proportional damage, is directly affected by your crit chance. The lower the crit chance, the lower chance you have to do crit damage, because if you don't crit damage doesn't occur, it becomes a useless stat. So you have to remember, these two go hand in hand, okay? Accuracy. This one a lot of people don't know about, so I want to talk about it. Increases the chance of successfully landing an attack on an enemy. When the caster's accuracy is higher than the target's evasion, the caster's attack has a 99% chance to succeed. So what that means, guys, is accuracy and evasion work against one another. The higher evasion a unit has, the less likely you're able to land an actual attack. So you'll see a miss, okay? It's not the same as landing a debuff, and I want to talk about the difference between the two, okay? So accuracy is your actual physical attacks landing. If you don't have very high accuracy, anyone with a high evasion will continuously dodge your attack. You'll see miss and you'll completely not do any damage. But the higher accuracy you have, you'll be able to combat that. Okay, so it's a very important stat to note. Okay, effectiveness, well, evasion. Let's go to evasion next. Increases the chance of evading an enemy's attack. When attack is avoided, damage reduced by 20%. Debuff and critical hits will not be activated. Okay, so very important to note that. So it does evade everything and then will reduce the damage by 20%. So that's a pretty important one. But these are the two here that affect the other two things I was talking about. So effectiveness, the higher the effectiveness, the lower chance the target has to resist debuffs. Okay, and we're going to talk about this because it's very important. Okay, and then resilience, the higher the chance to resist debuffs. Okay, so they work against one another, just kind of like accuracy and evasion do. So those stats are going to matter a lot, okay? So now let's actually go into how you want to gear your characters. Okay, so someone like Valentine, who's an archer, ranger, I say archer, ranger, you want to gear her with speed, because if you look at her actual stats right here, she's a speedy character and she has decent health and an okay attack. But her main goal, guys, when you look at her skills, is to buff the group, right? This skill specifically increases all allies' critical hit chance and critical damage for 2 turns, gains an extra turn after that. You want her to activate this as much as possible. Now, for her, if you can get her to 50% crit, with this buff, she'll do 100% crit damage. Oh, sorry, 100% crit rate, including with this buff here, pushes her to 200 plus crit damage, okay? So very important to try to get her to 50% crit. I need to do that. I need to focus on that. Excuse me. I'm still working on gear on that. But for her, speed is going to be what you want because you want this buff to go off as much as possible and give her 50% crit rate and crit damage with attack. Okay, those are going to be her stats. So her main thing, though, is going to be speed. Now, if you compare her to someone like a Rin here, whose main goal is to just DPS as much as possible and have an advantageous damage, which, by the way, is essentially ignoring the element, right, of a unit. She is actually built to do as much damage as possible. Now, if we look at her info, right, and you look at her right here, her striker generates 5 action points at the start of the turn, generates 20 action points when attacking, increases critical hit by 5%. Okay, so that you can see right away, her critical hit chance is much higher than what you saw earlier. It's a 44.9%. Then that's including the 39.9. Okay. Now, if you look at the actual stats, her attack is way higher. Her evasion's pretty good. Her accuracy is pretty good. And her speed is really good. But her defense and health suck. So she's going to be more an evasion, attacker, and a critical damage dealer. Okay. So you still want to put as much speed on her as possible. But your gear set with speed. So you have speed in almost in every piece of set, right? Right there, speed, 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 speed. But you want her to have as much crit chance and attack as possible with crit damage so she can dish out as much damage output as she possibly can. Effectiveness here does not matter for her because if you look at her skills, guys, right? Let's just take an example. She has no debuffs on her skills. Everything is about increasing her own attack, critical chance, and also giving her priority and giving her advantageous damage. So no debuffs. So effectiveness for her is an absolute waste. So that's an example of a stat you don't want to have on your gear, okay? But on the other hand, if you look at someone like, let's go to someone like Dolly, where she is a complete debuffer, effectiveness becomes one of the most important stats. Now, if you look here on the info section, a mage generates 5 action points, increases attack by 10%. So normally a mage would be a massive damage dealer. But if you look at their skill set, so for example, Dolly's, her damage really isn't meant to be high. It's all about her debuffs, right? So as a mage, you can see here attack, speed, accuracy, evasion, decent health, really low defense. But if you go to her skills, Sleepwalk, for example, has a chance to reduce the target's attack for 2 turns. You can see here in the red, it explains to you what that debuff is. Effectiveness would increase this 30% chance, okay? Effectiveness is most important for her. Still Drowsy. This one here has a chance to reduce all enemies' speed and accuracy for 2 turns. It literally does no damage. But this 50% and 30% is very important because you don't want to miss this. This is one of her biggest advantages in the fight, and you want to have effectiveness to make this go higher, the 50 and 30, okay? And then Sweet Dreams, this is her damage dealing move, but also has a chance to silence at 70%. This is extremely, extremely important to land on bosses and enemies because they can be silenced, right? Especially in PvP and some PvE bosses. You want this 70% to go as high as possible with effectiveness. So again, Dolly's going to want to have speed and effectiveness as her main 2 stats. Attack, even though she's a mage, attack is not a major part of Dolly's kit. So that's how you're going to really dictate, guys, how you build a unit, right? And there's other units out there. For example, let's find Snow. Where's Snow? Just to show you guys an idea here. Snow, here we go. Snow, for example, on her skill set is proportional to speed for her damage. So attack won't be as important here. You want to put as much speed set and speed gear on her as possible to maximize her damage. But at the same time, she does also need a little bit of that effectiveness because you want that freeze to land in order for those debuffs to take into effect, right? So this is an example of a character that doesn't need attack, can use crit damage, but absolutely needs speed to be optimal. And then you want to have some effectiveness in there to take advantage. Now, what the effectiveness is in terms of the amount you want, most games in here land about 70%. 70, the more you have though, the better, right? Because resilience works against it. So if you have 70 to 120% of effectiveness, you're most likely landing most of your buffs on PvE. PvP, on the other hand, works a whole different way because it's all based on what other opponents have for gear. So keep that in mind. But for PvE, 70% to probably like 120, that's what it was for Epic 7 at least, you can land pretty much every debuff without much of an issue. Alright guys, I hope this helped you understand what the stats are and how they work and how you want to gear your characters based on their skills. So you do have to do a little bit of reading, but I promise you guys, if you put the proper stats on the proper characters, they will maximize what they do, and your output and damage and your debuffs and your progression will be also maximized. Okay guys, this is Payne. I'll talk to you guys in the next one.